Do you find yourself searching, yearning for more, but you don't know what that more is? I'm Catherine Duncan, near-death survivor, mystic, and intuitive. Welcome to Everyday Awakening. On this podcast, I explore what it means to be alive. I help you awaken into your soul and live fully now. Through inspiring conversations, we'll dive into mindfulness, spirituality, and the transformative power of presence and living aligned with this universal energy. Together, we'll examine life's biggest questions, and I'll share practical wisdom to help you open your heart and awaken to the preciousness of being alive. John Strelecky is the #1 best-selling author of many books, including The Café on the Edge of the World, Return to the Why Café, What I've Learned, The Big Five for Life, to name a few. His works have been translated into 45 languages and sold more than 11 million copies worldwide. John, at 32, left a high-stress, high-profile job to follow his dream and travel the world. And this year changed his life, and he felt truly alive for the first time. After this trip, he came home and had a stream of consciousness that led him to writing the book, The Café on the Edge of the World. John has been recognized as one of the 100 most inspirational thought leaders in the field of leadership and personal development, and inspires people to live your life worldwide. I love John's famous quote, "Life doesn't happen by chance. It happens by choice. I'm the chooser." Welcome, John.
Hey there, Catherine. So great to see you.
And great to meet you. I think about our time we first met through our mutual friend, Alex. And I heard of your book. I read your book, and deep resonance with why are we here on this earth, what your book is all about.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I live and breathe this space. I know you do as well. And yet in the midst of a random week, a random day, everything can be happening, going on. And you get so bought into the illusion that you kind of forget that there's this whole other game going on behind the scenes. It's funny to me that you'd think at this point in my life, having lived in this space for as long as I have, that I'd be able to lock in and just stay in that space, but I get distracted just like everyone else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we all get distracted, don't we? The human condition.
I almost think it's the algorithm. I was thinking about this the other day, that if you think about it, like a great sports coach or a trainer, or any coach really for that matter, once you've sort of mastered a level, then they would challenge you by basically forcing you to level up. They'd put you against bigger competition, better competition, or increase the size of the mountain that you're going to climb, whatever. But if you're truly, genuinely interested in getting better at whatever your thing is. And so I think about that all the time, that just about the moment you figured out the game of life, then the algorithm is going to be like, all right, Catherine, sounds great. So happy you feel that way. Watch tomorrow.
Yeah. So true. When I released my book, Everyday Awakening, the last couple of years have been an even deepening of what it means to be alive. So I completely agree with what you just said. Well, I'd love to dive in and hear more about when you were 32 and you traveled and what that meant and what you learned and how you felt fully alive. What did that look like?
Yeah, so I had the dream of being an adventurer since I was a little kid, and I used to read all the Edgar Rice Burroughs Tarzan books, and like all the adventure books were the ones that I gravitated towards. And it's interesting because that's one of the questions I often ask people when they're struggling to figure out who they are, is what did you love to read when you were a kid, and who were your heroes back then? Because I think in many cases our heroes when we were kids are the people that we aspired to be. They were the attributes and values that we admired, and very often it's still the same when we're adult. We just have forgotten that. And so I was progressing along in my career. I was doing very, very well, but I didn't have a great heart connection to the job that I did. And so I would go home on the weekends. I was a strategy consultant, so I'd be flying back from clients on a Friday night, 11 o'clock at night. You know that world. And so you've been burning the candle at both ends, and finally you're coming home. And I can't tell you the number of times, Catherine, I'd be in the cab and I would just be kind of playing with my hands, like almost like a Reiki thing where you're just sort of sensing the energy between your palms and asking myself the question, is this all there is? Like, there's got to be something more than this. And then through a series of a number of different events happened, including my grandfather passing away, who was in his 80s, and me saying, geez, if I'm lucky enough to make it to my 80s, will I be happy with the choices that I made? Will I be like, whoa, dude, you totally missed out on what you could have been or you could have seen or experienced? And I realized I was not on the trajectory that was going to get me to that 83 and be happy. And it was really weird because I didn't even know him that well. It was my mom's dad. I'd only met him maybe a half dozen times in my life. They lived very far away. But it shook me, it rocked me. And so I ended up deciding to do something that everyone said was literally, they use the term crazy, all of them,
which is to leave everything behind and go backpack around the world at 32.
People say, well, yeah, you do that when you're 18 or you do that as a gap year after college, but not when you're 32 and like in the middle of your career. But it changed my life completely. I tasted the adventure that I dreamed of for so long, and to see people and have the experiences. Yeah, it was just absolutely marvelous. I tapped into my intuition in a way that I didn't even realize was humanly possible for me. And so, yeah, I think it opened up a whole new world to me that I didn't know existed.
Interesting you said tapped into your intuition. And it sounds like looking inward, just the whole experience traveling. What you were seeing, sensing, feeling, what was happening into your, would that be accurate?
Yeah. So I think part of it is when you embark on an adventure, when you pursue a dream, you have a perception of what it's going to look like and feel like and be like. And then when you start to experience that, it just kicks into hyper mode, the happiness factor in your heart. You're like, yes, it's everything that I imagined and more. But it also challenges you in all kinds of different ways. Like we were just talking about, I was almost killed by an upside down flying car when I was in South Africa. That's going to challenge your way of thinking about life and the preciousness of life. I met people who were in their entire lifetime living in the poor country that they live in. They will probably not earn as much as I earned in a month as a consultant.
And they were so much more happier than I was.
And so much more generous. I remember I was sleeping in this little A-frame hut in this remote island of Thailand. And I just had sort of like a mat, like a straw mat that had been woven, and I'm sleeping on that. I wake up in the morning and I motioned to these fruits that were in the trees, and I was like, what are those? And this guy just breaks a big handful of this stuff and just gives it to me. I said, oh, can I pay you? Oh, no, 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 no.
I mean, kindness and generosity that I couldn't imagine from people who had next to nothing.
Yeah, you learn to trust your intuition in ways that like I said, you never imagined possible. You start thinking about things. One of the interesting things about traveling in a country where you don't speak the language is that your mind thinks more than you do when you're in a country where you do speak the language. Because when you speak the language, you unconsciously read every sign, you hear every side conversation, but none of that matters when you're in a country where you don't speak the language. And so your mind has a chance to think in ways that it wouldn't before too.
Mm-hmm. Opens up whole new ways to viewing the world. Very interesting. And isn't it interesting that money doesn't buy happiness? It might make life easier, but at the end of the day, and I've witnessed this personally, professionally, people that have, in fact, low income, even middle income, I mean, they're the happiest people. What does that say? Just what you answered.
Yeah, no, I think one of the great takeaways is to know your numbers. And by that, I mean, what is it that's going to enable you to live the life that you want to live? And I think in most cases, we're raised to pursue numbers that aren't really of our choosing and associated with dreams and things that aren't of our choosing either. Like if you want to own a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house on a lake in Minnesota, for example, like awesome, good for you. But if that's not your dream, then why are you working towards it? And I think we sort of default into these things because I don't know about you, but very rarely in my childhood or young adult life did I have anybody kind of talking about these things. It was just like, yeah, just follow the path, go to school, get a job, work. Like that's life.
Yeah. And how much family of origin shapes who we are. Family of origin. And like you, I mean, my family of origin, corporate family, corporate father, all my 5 older siblings, all in business. And it was just expected. It wasn't even said. It was like, you will go to a high school, you'll go to a good college, you will have a career. I mean, it wasn't even discussed, but it was understood.
I'm fascinated by that because I wonder sometimes in the grand cosmic algorithm of the universe and the way this whole thing is designed.
If indeed it is a game, and if indeed we get our 28,900 days to play, then what is the point of it all? That's kind of the first question on the Café menu. Why am I here, right? What is the point of all this? And I do very much wonder in the grand structure of it all, if you are born into a family that enables you to experience some of the challenges, which you will then have to overcome if indeed you are going to pursue your purpose in life, if you're going to find a way to let your genius out into the world.
Well, I would love to hear how you would answer that question. I have a clear answer to that. What would you say? And I'll tell you then what I think. What do you think?
So I would say 100% yes. And the only reason I even caveat that a
Mhm.
tiny bit is that I know that there are people who have grown up in environments that are so much worse than what I grew up in. And so I don't want to diminish someone's incredible challenges, maybe the abuse that they suffered or the very, very unbelievable challenges that they experienced. Because the theory says on some level, I wanted to take that on. And I know that some of those are such horrific things
Mhm.
that it would be very easy for someone to look me in the eye and say, you have no idea what I've gone through. There's no way. And so for this concept to even begin to work in my mind, I have to pull back far enough in the storyline to say, actually, we're souls, we're energy. And the human experience is a fractional part of the whole story. And so when we say, oh, I want to enter into this household and experience a parent who yells nonstop, right, when they're very upset, then it doesn't make that behavior right. It just means that they are an actor in the play of my story. They're going to play their role, so I get to experience that. But that is a fractional piece of my whole existence in terms of the grand story.
Mhm. Everything you just said resonates with me, and I lean towards reincarnation. I've just had too many experiences of meeting people and working with people at end of life. Then you look at your life path, and I think of my life path facing dying twice, and then, really asking this universal energy, what do you want? What do you want from me? And then I became a chaplain, and now I wrote a book on what it means to be alive. I've been contemplating that since I was 11 years old. So very interesting. So tell us, when you got back from traveling, I think you shared you had a stream of consciousness of just pouring through you to write the book, The Café on the Edge of the World. Can you talk about that experience?
Yeah, so this was super fascinating. I had never planned to be a writer. I had never even had that enter my mind, to be honest with you. And so I come back from this experience and I had a consulting gig. I had someone on a consulting project contact me literally shortly before I was coming back. And they said, hey, any chance you're back in the country? I need a guy and I want it to be you if possible. And I was coming back, and Catherine, I didn't have a future planned. I just was coming out of this amazing experience and I didn't have money. And so I was like, sure, I'll take this gig. And so I take the gig. It's everything that I left behind. It's the same sort of backbiting stuff. And what's crazy is once you've seen people in Vietnam who are in these bands that they play for tip money on the streets, and all of them have only one arm or one leg because they're victims of landmines. And then you come back and you're in the consulting space and someone is talking about, okay, how do we increase sales of this high-end luxury automobile by 0.3%, because that'll mean our bonuses go up by whatever. And it's just very hard to get excited about helping
Yeah.
that be the reality, because it just seems so myopic in the grand picture. And I'm not judging those people. I'm just saying that once you've the size of I always say the size of your problems are reversely proportional to the size of your worldview. Once you're out there and you've seen what these people are really dealing with, like losing your bonus over 0.3% of the car sales is not that big of a deal, right? But so I came back from this and I did this assignment, and I was coming back on my very last trip. I get on the flight. I had to rush to the airport because my flight was running late. And I don't have a book to read, and we're stuck on the tarmac. And so as a traveler yourself, like this is rule 101. You never, ever don't have something to read. But I didn't. And so I'm sitting there and I'm like, the thought that came to my mind was, what would I tell someone right now is the meaning of life? And so I started to write out something, because I had these two worlds colliding. I'd had this incredible experience of traveling. And then I came back to what I had left before. And so it was the next day when I woke up in the morning that I heard the voice that said, sit down and start typing. And it began with that first sentence that I'd written on the plane.
That is really inspiring. And I appreciate, having read your book, how you define what is it, PFE, purpose for existing. Like, really,
Yeah.
the crutch of it is like, why are we here? What does it mean? Can you talk more about that?
I think everything starts from there, and it's not something that I was exposed to at all for the vast majority of my life. I would say until I started digging into the world of self-development, that was the first time I had ever been exposed to this concept of purpose. Because like I said, I think before that, it was just like, yeah, you go to school, you get a job, you work. At 65, you retire, and then you go do the stuff that you always wanted to do. And Even as a kid, I thought that is absolutely ridiculous because everybody I knew that worked was unhappy in their adult jobs. Um, and so then I go on this trip. I have this book flow through me, and it's got this concept of purpose for existing, and it's got 3 questions on the cafe menu. The first of which is, why are you here? And it just dawned on me how critical and important that question is. If I can answer for myself, why am I here? In other words, what do I want to do with my 28,900 days? What is my purpose? Then I can start directing my life in alignment with that. I can start making good choices in alignment with that. I can start allocating my resources, like my time, my energy, my money, in alignment with that life. Outside of that, I'm a victim to what everybody is trying to sell me, in essence. Every single distraction that's out there is sucking up my time, my energy, and probably my money as well. And I never quite feel fulfilled. I never quite feel content. I never feel like I'm actually living life. I'm just operating within the life experience. And so that's why it was super powerful for me. And it's one of the questions I highly encourage people, if they're feeling a bit dissatisfied with their existence, to ask that question. Why am I here?
That's just incredible. So, and the 3 questions are starting with, why am I here? And then the next 2.
Do you fear death? And are you fulfilled? And the second one is super powerful to me. When I was on my travels in Africa, there came a day when I woke up in a little A-frame tent. And I thought to myself, the very first thought I had when I woke up in the morning was, I could die today and I'd be okay with that, Catherine. I had seen life. I had lived life. I had experienced life in the way that I dreamed of living it. And not that I wanted to die that day, not that I was going to do something stupid that would, increase the likelihood that I would die. But I'd finally lived my life. And I felt if it was to end today, I'd actually be okay with that. And so I tell people that all the time. I sort of laughingly, tongue in cheek, tell them, I say, I hope you get to the point in your life where you can wake up in the morning and say, if I died today, I'd be okay with that. Because that means you're aligned with your purpose. That means you're choosing the allocation of those resources in alignment with your purpose. And then everything on top of that, man, that's just bonus. That's just extra.
That's very inspiring. And what would you say over your life journey? You've been an author, 20 some years, writing a variety of books. Have you met many people on your path where you ask the question, do you fear death and are you living on purpose? I'm just curious, what do you hear? Those are big life questions that I experienced with people as they're about to die as a hospice chaplain. And I felt like people really got it. I mean, it was magical, those moments before people died. I saw it time and time and time again. But I'm just curious, in the lifespan, do you see that? People can answer that. Why am I here? Do you fear death? What's your experience around that?
I mean, I'm super blessed in that, we haven't talked about this, but I think you and I have talked about it prior, but I'll bring it up here just for context. And that I honestly feel, had I have not chosen to follow my heart, leave everything behind, go backpack around the world, that the story of the cafe would still have been written. It just would have a different author.
And I just get to be a co-collaborator of that and the way that it happened.
And I will tell you, the experience is incredibly humbling and rewarding on so many levels. The amount of people that, when we do a live event, that come up to you and say, this book changed my life. And
probably the biggest reason when you ask them why, they say, because I thought I was alone.
I thought I was the only person thinking, isn't there more to life than this? And so the story, I think this is the reason why the story was in the ether waiting to be born, is because there's a lot of people out there who are struggling just like I was struggling, feeling very alone. And the story helps them realize that they are not, that there is a community of people out there, a whole world out there who is thinking about this stuff. It's just not happening in their everyday conversations. And so we feel alone, but that's not the case.
Mm-hmm. And you were ready, you were open, you had this incredible year traveling, and you came back as a different person, and you were open. You're open to letting that drop in. I agree with you. I think books, ideas, they come into us when there's a stillness, when there's a silence. And I found that with my book, Everyday Awakening. I actually intuitively, I saw a vision of it. I saw my book with my name on it, that I was writing a book. It just a knowing, no question, I was writing a book.
And that's, I think, if we allow ourselves to get to the point where we're playing in that space with the energy, that's when the game can take on a whole new level of fun. And this may sound silly as an example, but it impacts you in every aspect of your life. I'm an athlete. I play beach volleyball, so 2-man beach volleyball. And I was a professional for many years when I was much, much younger, but I still play now. And as an example of the energy and why maybe somebody who's listening to this would be like, oh, this is actually worth trying to tap into. I literally at times, Catherine, I will see my opponent take the ball, turn around, head towards the back of the service line, and I will get the intuitive ping when they serve, it's going to go here. How is that possible? How is it that, I mean, that's like predicting the future as if it's already happened. And yet, as you said, you saw your book as if it had already happened. I firmly believe the Café story had already been written. It just needed someone to transcribe. And so I'm fascinated by what the heck we are doing in this system, you know? How much of it is predestiny? How much of it is that we are actually co-collaborating to create it real time? How much of it is structurally designed, and then the rest of it is constantly being created. But what I do know is that there is a whole other world beyond the sort of brick and mortar elements of life. And this is what happened when you had your vision. This is what happened when I was open to the possibility of the story flowing through me. And when we allow ourselves to enter that realm of the experience, it just gets easier. That would be my takeaway if I was to recommend to somebody.
Like, allow that piece of human experience to
Grow in your skill set,
and you will find that life gets a lot easier.
And the words come to me: surrendering, listening, not found in our busy, fast chattering mind. I think so many people, and I see this every single day in my private practice, people just get caught in their busy thinking mind, and that sense of, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentient, the guidance, the listening. It's not when we're thinking, it's in the silence, that stillness. And that's a lot of the work I do when I work with my clients, but it's there for all of us.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to the question, is it the same for all of us? So for example, I'd be curious to know how you experience it. When you have a sense of knowing about something, do you have a physical reaction? Do you get chills up and down your spine? Do you hear a voice? Is it auditory for you? Because I think everybody's experience probably is slightly different. But I would love to hear what yours is, because I think it's useful for everyone who's listening to know that the way in which you experience this might be different than you expect.
Here's what I think. I think it's different for every one of us. For me, when I'll catch my mind, like being human, we all do this, right? We catch our minds like, oh, I went over there with a thought or a worry, or like, wow, my friend Joseph Nguyen says, like, ego drive-by. It's like, woof, there I went, but I'm coming back. But then I'm here, I feel my breath, I feel that grounding. And for me, I experience it as, yeah, knowings come through. I'm a mystic, I'm an intuitive. I actually see a lot. I see spirits, and I hear auditory. I literally hear words like on track, or a knowing comes through me, or the words come through me. But I have found years of working with people that it is different for every one of us. It might be an energy, a gut feeling, a sensation. It might be an auditory. It might be, visual. It is truly different, but it's tuning in. Like, what is it for everyone listening? What is that gift? We all have this gift in the moment, in the stillness. So tell me, for you, what is the gift for you?
I mean, it's funny because I don't think about it that often. It's just sort of at this point reactionary, because I think I've figured out a way to interact with it, so I don't kind of dissect it. But now that you're asking the question, like I said, for the volleyball, I'll actually get a vision or a sense of tremendous knowingness. I think it almost happens instantaneously, because with the volleyball, for example, I don't think I could just know that it's going in one direction. I must see it and know it at the same time. In the process of writing, it's very visual and very auditory. So when I sit down, I actually see the Café. So there's 4 books in that series, and I would say for every one of them, my job is to sit down and watch what's happening and listen to the conversations and type it. It's just, yeah, it's crazy.
Fascinating.
For the characters are actively engaging in their discussions and dialogue, and my job is just to transcribe it all as it's happening. So that would be very visual and auditory. But I would say at times for other things, it's just a sense of knowing, or it's chills up and down the spine. I get a physical reaction sometimes. And when that happens, especially when I'm writing, actually, sometimes something will flow, or I'll write something and it's just, you get the chills, and I'm like, oh, that's going to be really connects with people.
That's so good. And I found when I was writing my book, I was writing at the beginning of COVID, And 9 o'clock at night, the house would be quiet and I would pray, meditate, and sit at the computer. And then I just started typing and I couldn't stop. It was just like the stream kept coming through me night after night, week after week, month after month.
Yeah, you can relate then. And I think that's probably the story with anyone who taps into whatever is their genius. And I do believe everybody has a genius. So for everyone listening here, if you're struggling to find your genius, that's okay. Doesn't matter that you don't know it yet. Allow yourself the freedom and flexibility to discover what that is. And a great technique for that is to ask people who are close to you, who love and respect you. Like, and it may seem weird to ask the question, but to ask them, like, I'm really kind of struggling to figure out what I'm good at. Like, what do you think I'm particularly good at? What do you notice about me? Because very often for ourselves, we don't realize the things that we do that are unique or special. We just think, oh, that's just me, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But I'm particularly creative with my daughter. Like from the time that she was little, I've invented worlds for that kid. We have told so many stories that I got to invent. I never realized that like that was something that was different me compared to somebody else. Now there's plenty of other people who have ridiculous skills that I don't have, but for me, creativity is one of the ones that I have. And so allowing other people to give you a little directional guidance is a great way to help you realize, oh yeah, actually I am kind of good at that and I'm kind of different at that. And then see where that could take you, whether that's writing a book or designing flower arrangements or who knows what, but allowing yourself to tap into your genius is a great way. And I think interestingly, tapping into your genius sort of opens up this channel to the intuitive calling in some way. It's like you press one button and the other button gets pressed at the same time.
I love what you just shared. And I do think we really do create our life. I mean, it's amazing how everything, even emotions, thoughts, everything is energy, and tuning into how am I living all day long and what am I passionate about and growing the good. And I mean, we know that we can turn on the stress response by thought alone. So even just tuning in, how do I live each day? And, one day, just take the question, am I in my mind? Am I in my body? Where am I?
Yeah.
And then start to notice.
You said something so powerful there, which it took me decades and decades to figure out. And that is that I actually control my thoughts. I mean, oh my gosh, why did nobody share life wisdom? What the heck? How did I get to be in my 40s before I finally figured that out? Because what I realized is that it's a behavior. Like the thoughts, I thought the thoughts were controlling me, or I thought they were independent of me. No. Like if I want to, I can control the flow of that information. Like you said, you might have an ego drive-by, but I control what happens after that. And so I use a technique called mantra where I will redirect my mind. It took me about 3 months to master this because I kept defaulting back to my old mental behaviors. But using something like a mantra, as I'm describing, helps you realize that you are in control of your thoughts. And once you get control of those thoughts, that's like supercharging your capacity to do whatever you want in life.
Mm-hmm. I like the idea of a mantra, and I do too. I sometimes use a mantra, affirmation, but even understanding the whole field of neuroplasticity, we can rewire our brain, negative worry, anxiety, every one of us, by the awareness, noticing what is that thought, and when you think that and can identify the thought, it calms your nervous system. What's the feeling? You name the feeling, it starts to calm your nervous system. You feel the feelings. Feelings aren't permanent. They move through us. If we don't feel them, they get stuck inside of us. And then growing the good. So there's so much we can do in creating our reality. But I do think the culture, and especially right now, there's so much fear, there's so much chaos, and it's easy to just take in that outer energy of fear and chaos. I go back to a quote you shared in your book. I liked it. In fact, you just alluded to it earlier. You can't fear not having the chance to do something if you're already done it or if you're doing it every day.
Yeah, this was one of the ones that when it flowed through me and I wrote it down, I was like, oh my gosh, I know that didn't come from me. There was just like such an unbelievable sense of knowing that there was so much truth in that. And I didn't understand or know that truth 5 seconds before it came through me. And when we really allow that to sink in, that what we fear is getting to the end of our life and realizing that we haven't really lived. That's the issue. We don't fear dying. We fear getting to the end and realizing we haven't lived. And so the guaranteed way to make sure that that doesn't happen is to figure out what you want to do with your life and then do those things. Who do you want to be as a human being? And then be that person. And then whether the day is tomorrow or 50 years from tomorrow, that is the last day, it doesn't matter. Because at that point, you've done what you wanted to do. You've seen what you've wanted to see. You've experienced what you wanted to experience. You've been the human being that you had the capacity to be. And then the fear goes away.
And I could sense and hear pushback relating to what you just said, which I very much resonate with. But people could say, well, nice to say, but I have to make money. I have to pay rent. I have to get food on the table for my family. But I mean, I'm curious your thoughts on that. I mean, there's still openings to what is my heart saying? What is my soul saying? Just starting to listen, like we're talking about, listen inwardly.
Yeah, I've been the one who was saying those things for many, many years of my life. And so trust me, I get that. And in my case, I don't know about everybody who's listening because everybody's story is going to be different. But in my case, it was a defense mechanism. I felt that because of the challenges I experienced when I was growing up, because of the economic situation I was in when I was growing up, that I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder. I had something to prove, that I belonged at the table, that I was worth having at the table. Crazy enough, this storyline goes back from a cell level, back 2 generations, to an incredible story with my grandmother. They were immigrants who came to the United States, and she was one of the few of her family that was born here. And her parents both died when she was 5 years old. And her brothers and sisters gathered in a 2-room place, put her in one room, all the rest of them were in the other room, and they voted on whether they should put her in an orphanage or not. And the walls were so thin that she could hear right through. She knew which brother and which sister said put her in the orphanage and keep her. And she spent her entire life trying to prove that she was worth having around. And it's crazy because I saw that same, my dad is passed now, but I saw that same behavior in him, right? And I saw that same behavior in myself when I looked at some of the things that I had done and the ways that I had done them. And so, listen, who we are at this moment does not have to be where the story ends, I guess is what I would say. Find out who's living your dream life and figure out the way in which they got from where they were to where they got to, and start replicating those behaviors. Make small little adjustments. One of my favorite quotes of all time, we were just talking about this a few minutes ago, offline, was, are the steps you're taking today getting you one step closer to where you want to be tomorrow? And in this world where we're living in, it is so easy to be distracted. The whole world wants to distract you from that step. You allow yourself to get laser focused on where you want to go, and you just take at least one step every day. And then when you're about to do something, just ask yourself that question, if I spend my time this way, if I spend my energy, if I spend my money this way, is this getting me one step closer to where I want to be tomorrow? And if the answer is no, then don't do it. It's like, again, why did I not learn that when I was so many decades ago? That would have been so helpful. But my hope is that everybody who's listening today and hears that is like, yeah, okay, that's helpful.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I would say, to add to what you're saying, I agree with all of it. It also takes a strength, and it takes courage, and it takes a level of consciousness of like, this isn't working. This isn't feeling right. I work with many people now in my private practice. I'm no longer working as a chaplain in a medical center, but people that find me or refer to me who maybe they've made all the money or they've done the career, but there's just a gnawing inside, a sense of like, this isn't it. And most people I meet with want to dive in and start to feel the energy, feel that silence, feel the callings, and I help them on that path. And once in a while, there's people like, nope, not doing the work. I just can't.
Yeah, and I can't tell you the number of times that people have come up to me and said, I was walking through the bookstore and your book fell off the shelf in front of me. Somebody says, yeah, somebody gave me your book and I put it on my nightstand and I didn't read it for 2 years. And then I read it. And now I'm here today to tell you, like, it changed my life. Because sometimes life is just about timing. And, sometimes we're not ready to hear the message. There was plenty of times in my life when I'm sure when people told me profound pieces of life wisdom, which would have been awesome had I have actually implemented back when they told me. But for whatever reason, I just wasn't ready. And so that's okay. It's about allowing yourself the gift of you're doing the best you can, be open to the possibilities. And I guess my overriding thought, Catherine, for anybody like that would be just, as you said, allow yourself to go into the mental space and say, why am I fighting against this so hard? Like, what's that big barrier that's keeping me from trusting that there might be something on the other side of this concept?
Mm-hmm. And creating that space, even just a little bit, to drop out of living head up, living in your mind, to come down, to feel the moment just for a few minutes, to let your mind slow down, be here now, feel into what's here. And even that is huge for many, many people. It's not a normal practice, and I live in my mind runs me, and hard to start to learn another way. But when you start to open into the other way, and traveling is a wonderful way to do it because you're in new experiences, it just naturally cracks you open. But in that stillness.
Yeah, sometimes it's again, this is something that I never realized for the vast majority of my younger life, that again, we were talking about, you are not your thoughts. You're also not your physicality. And the easy proof of this is if you take a piece of paper and a pen and write your name, and in the process of writing your name, observe yourself writing your name. And the question is, who's doing the observing? And because it's very tactile, if you have a pen and you've got paper and you're doing it, it's very easy to be mind off doing it. But the minute you turn that other part on, you realize there's actually two things going on here. There is the thinking me, which is very different from the physically doing me. And those are really two separate entities. And that thinking me is a whole other thing. And that's sort of, I love that because it changes the game, first of all. And then second of all, you start to realize, like, wait, the thinking me is me making choices and I get to control that. So it shifts that power back to you, which I think is what it's all about.
Yep. And we're that stillness, the essence, that divine energy behind that, behind the thoughts, behind the feelings, just that energy, and consciously deciding to grow that. I mean, depending on your daily practices, I start first thing in the morning when I wake up, I tune in to having some moments of thankfulness and feeling that vibration. So not only thinking, but then feeling. And then I just I can feel my essence, my soul vibrating through my body. And I have some moments of prayer, and it just that's how I start my day.
Yeah. And I think that's a great point. And I'll give a really simple analogy that I share with people. I live here in Florida, and it's amazing to me how many people live here and never go to the beach. And when you talk to them, and again, people like fly from all over the world to go to these beaches because we have some spectacular beaches close to where I am. And the interesting thing that I've learned is that if you love going to the beach and you don't go for 6 months, and someone says you can't go to the beach for another 6 months, it's not happy news, but you're like, well, whatever. It doesn't have very much emotional pop to it. But if you love going to the beach and you go every single week, and someone were to say to you, you can't go to the beach for 6 months, you would fight that. And you'd fight it because you know the joy it brings you. You'd know that stillness that you're talking about. And so what I recommend to people is, as much as possible, make sure that every single week you're in whatever that state is that brings you that joy. Because when you experience that on a regular basis, you will find more ways to be in that state, and you will fight against the things that are trying to keep you out of that state. And what you're describing, I hear with some of your clients, is that they don't remember what it's like to be in the state. And that's the toughest spot to be in, because then there's no emotion attached to it. But man, oh man, once you get to retaste it, it's a whole other thing. And to me, that was the year of travel. The year of travel was like, it's a buffet of tasting the life that you dreamed of living. And once you've had that, you'd never go back.
Yeah. Oh, sounds just very inspiring. And I think we can live multidimensionally. And what do I mean by that? Where, like right now, you and I, we're using our thinking mind, asking questions, talking, reflecting, but that radiant calm, that stillness is there. It's there. Mm-hmm. It's in the background. And then I'm saying that, and I see a spirit in my room right now talking to you. I mean, there's multi-layers. I really think we can live multidimensionally, and it's a consciousness, and it's a consciousness. It's a choice. It's a practice.
I'm fascinated by your ability to do that, because it's not something that I can't say that I've ever seen spirits in the way that you do. And to have that in your visual perception, I don't know, that does that just kind of rock your world every once in a while? Like, oh, or are you just so used to, is it like going to the beach? You love it so much, you're connected with it so much that it's just like, no, this is my reality.
Well, I've been seeing spirits for 25 years. I see a totem animal. Mine is a wolf, so I see a wolf face often. Sometimes it will pop up and I'll just be like, stop, go away. I mean, I can turn it off. So turn it on, turn it off. I'd say underlining all of it is a feeling of comfort, actually.
Mhm.
It's a affirmation that there's so many layers of reality, and I
Yeah.
think we're a soul in a body a short time, and then our soul goes on. I don't go farther, like where exactly everything that happens, but so it's just a knowing that there's so much to this being alive. And like you alluded to earlier, saying we're the soul, and that is what we are. I just think we're in a body for a short time and then we go on. I know death, take it with a grain of salt, but is not an end. After being with so hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people as they died and seeing their spirit leave their body, seeing their spirit come back to me, yeah, we transform.
And I would imagine that for you, having seen that so many times and having experienced it through your own near-death experiences, that it grounds you in a way that is almost impossible to convey. You can explain it, but it's like trying to describe the taste of pizza to someone, but they don't get to taste the pizza, you know? You do your best to explain it, but it's still a concept versus a reality. And so I would imagine that it's very interesting the way the algorithm might play with you in your life because you're so locked into a grounded reality associated with that, that it must do some really wacky stuff to try and convince you that no, 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 this is it. This is the real thing.
I just think every day, the older I get, the more I open, the more I'm
Okay.
attuned, the more guidance I get. And I look back over my life path, and an interesting question you ask. I mean, I see how it's all come about, from leaving the corporate world with Time Magazine to then study theology and become a chaplain. And then I was a chaplain. I'm like, okay, this is my life. I used to make a lot of money with Time Magazine. And now, as a chaplain, you don't do it for money, as a calling. And I felt so called to it. But then I started feeling after 15 years, like, I want to be, I think, with the living, not just people in crisis dying every single day. So then that transition, and then the transition into, oh, well, let's see, I'm writing a book now. So just, I think if everyone listening be open, the guidance truly is there. It's there about what is our passion? Just like what you're saying, why are we here? What is it? And I loved how you weaved in going back to the question about if you really are following your passion, you don't have that fear of death. That's a big statement.
Yeah. It sounds like one of the things that you've come to peace with, I think it's a really tough thing in our society to do, is to embrace what I call MPO, multiple personality order. It's like you're not just one version of yourself. The way you are when you're a podcast host is one version of you, and it's authentic and it's perfect and it's awesome. When you're in the process of writing, you're a different version of Catherine, and it's also awesome and perfect and brilliant. And the way you're interacting with your closest friends, sitting around a kitchen table, laughing about something that's ridiculously stupid that nobody else in the world would understand, is also the authentic Catherine that is perfect and beautiful and awesome. They're not identical. And I think in our society today, it's very easy for society to try and want to put you in a category, in a box. Oh, this is Catherine, right? Or this is John. And so I think that's one of the interesting elements of the algorithm that has evolved, which is us enabling ourselves to embrace the fact that we have MPO. We've got multiple personality order. We're different times, different places, different versions of ourselves that are still all authentic. And that's okay. That's awesome.
That deeply resonates with me. And then love to ask you, what does, when you think of spirituality, what does that look like for you? What does that mean to you? I mean, I kind of have a vibe and sense already, but some people it's a sense of just deep energy. Some people it's a belief in God or source or Brahma or Allah, or where do you land there?
I think the underlying question for me is, how does the whole game work? And so there's two theories that I've come up with, Catherine. One theory is that your parents had sex and 9 months later out you came and there you were. And you're going to get your 28,900 days. And then at the end of that, statistically, your life will be over and that's it. And that's the game, right? And interestingly, if that's true, then, well, actually, let me hold off on the if it's true part. But so let's talk about option two. So option two is you're actually something before you're born, that you are a spirit, an energy, a source of something. And you decide with conscious intent to enter the human experience. And when I think about why that would be, the only answer I can come to that makes sense is to learn something. And in the process of learning, you automatically contribute to the collective consciousness, which means your learnings are now available to everyone else, just like their learnings are available to you at the same time. And to your point, I can't tell you exactly why the universe needs to grow and learn. So I'm still working on that part of the story. But the point is that, so you're going to get your 28,900 days in this physical form. When you overcome the challenges that you picked prior to being born, which happens by awareness of what those challenges are, because if you notice in the rearview mirror of life, you've probably experienced the same challenges over and over again, but they grow in intensity. So if we pay attention in the early stages, we get to overcome that challenge early with minimal pain. If we don't, then somewhere down the line, it's going to be a 2x4 across the forehead, and I've experienced those myself, until we really pay attention. The net of that is that eventually we overcome our challenges, and now the game really gets interesting, because now the game becomes about not just dealing with your challenges, but about what is your genius, what is going to be your contribution to the world, what is your purpose, why are you here? This is where the more you're tapped into that intuition and the rest of the cosmic algorithm, the game not only gets super fun and super interesting, it gets much easier because you realize I'm not alone. I've actually got the entire resources of the entire history of humanity and the entire history of the universe at my disposal when I need it. That becomes increasingly interesting. And then eventually you'll die. And then you'll move on to whatever form or energy you were before, or maybe you elevate up. I don't know. Maybe you go to the next level after what it's like to be an enlightened human. Interestingly to me, as I've thought about this in great detail, if it's the first one, then you might as well be brave. You might as well be bold. You might as well live an awesome life, because when it's done, it is done. And there's nothing left after this, and this is it. So you might as well push through those fears and freaking jump out of that airplane with a parachute if you want to, and ask that person on a date that you've always wanted to ask out, whatever, but you might as well be bold because this is it. If it's the other, you end up in the same place, right? This is not all there is. You have nothing to fear. Like, this is going to be part of a minuscule part of your overall experience in the humans, in the sort of energetic ether. And then when this is done, you'll go on to whatever that was that's next. And therefore, you might as well be bold. You might as well strap on the parachute and jump out of the airplane. You might as well ask out that person you've been dreaming about asking out. You might as well overcome your fears and live the life that you want to live. And somehow when that came to me and I've thought about that, I don't know, so much of the stress and the fear of life went away in that moment. It's like, which one is 100% true? I have a belief system. I'm definitely, my personal belief system says it's the second. But either way, you end up in the same place, which is you might as well live an amazing life.
Thank you for sharing that. Distillation of that. That was terrific. So it sounds like for you, and what I'm picking up is you believe in some kind of universal energy. That's where you're landing.
Yeah, there seems to be something massive going on. There's enough structure to make me think that it's not random at all. There's a cosmic algorithm at play. So the more I do something, the more I demonstrate a particular behavior, the more the algorithm feeds that behavior, which is super empowering when you realize like, okay, like maybe I'll start changing the inputs so I can get different outputs and I actually control that piece of the game. But it doesn't seem random to me at all. And when I say it doesn't seem random, I don't just mean for my life. Like if I look across people's lives, I see the same sort of realities being experienced, the same sort of rules, which makes me think that there is a divine structure going on.
That resonates with me very much.
How about you? I mean, this is the ultimate question of like, what is the point? Why are we here? But what's your...
Well, my book, Everyday Awakening, I say it's about, for me, and my belief is living from our heart and soul. That's it. Living from our soul, that oneness with this universal energy. And after working with thousands of people as a chaplain in my private practice, I'm very attuned to the fact that language is limiting. It's just, and when you have a particular faith background, maybe you use, and for me from childhood, the word God does resonate with me, but I'm also very sensitive that can offend people, that word. I mean, so I'm all about being inclusive, ecumenical, but the bottom line is tuning into that oneness with this energy, the universal energy and the guidance. That is why I'm here. That's it. That's my passion. That's what I think about all day long, from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to bed, and all the work I do.
I love that. And I know from having read your amazing book that so many of those incredible stories of the work that you did in different aspects of your life have enabled people to find that peace, inches of their story arc, right? Which is so beautiful and so amazing. And so it's not surprising that
You are so connected to that type of world.
in the grand cosmos, why do you think that we as humans even exist? Why does the universe need us to be human?
I think we come to this earth, and I lean into reincarnation, but to learn how to tune into that universal energy and to learn how to love. It's where I land. Love. I think the reason we're here is to learn to love, to keep loving, to keep opening our heart to, I think when we die, what we take with us is our ability to love. I think how we differentiate ourselves is our ability to love. And I saw that time and time and time again with people as they died, like literally this radiant light around them before they died. And it was so beautiful. And that was also a really big pushing inside me of writing this book of like, you don't have to wait, like just in same line with what you're talking about. You don't have to wait till you're 80, 70, 80, 90 and think, oh, why am I here? What's life about? You start searching at the very end and you would get a glimpse of it and experience it. And then you die. It's like, no, why not spend your whole life like you learned at 32 in your book? So much crossover in our work.
Yeah, very interesting. And we come from very different stories, different backgrounds, and yet we've arrived at some of the same conclusions, which is, like I said, I think there is this universal structure in place. And my guess is that if we went back to the ancient writings of the ancient Greek philosophers, and you'd see some of the same things. Like they, thousands of years ago, came to some of the same conclusions because they stopped and they thought. It's the game of life, as you described it. And I don't know if you've ever been approached about this, but as you were talking, I had an intuitive flash. So I just want to share this and put this out there to the entire listening audience. You have the ability to see these things, physically see them. Like you were talking about the
Yep.
people when they're transitioning and you can actually see that. I can't see that. And so the only way I would ever really understand what you're talking about, where I could feel it at a cellular level, like you see it and feel it, is if it was turned into a film. I
Mm.
don't know if somebody out there listening, but you have access to Catherine Duncan, who can describe to you what it's like when a body dies and the soul continues on. Make a movie about that.
Yeah. That's
What she sees. That would be so awesome. Yeah.
and then when people come back and see me in the middle of the night, I literally, after being woken up time and time again, I finally put up energy boundaries. You cannot come within 20 feet and wake me up. And then at the end of my days in hospice, there were some people I'd meet that were deeply spiritual. It was just magical. And I would tell them, come see me. So then I knew. I knew I'd be awakened in the night with the spirit. Like I was ready.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, you would be able to describe it in the way, like in the old movies when they'd have the criminal and they'd be like, all right, can you describe him? The sketch artist would be drawing it out. This would be a way better version of that because you could be talking to someone who's a creative art director for a film and they'd be like, does it look like this? You'd be like, no, it's more like this. And you actually get it to the same way that you see it. And then I understand on a visual level what you experience. That would be
so good. Well, thank you for that spark of inspiration.
Yes. So for all the filmmakers listening, please call Catherine and ask for the film rights.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, I just have a couple more questions. I know we're getting near the end of our time, but you talk in your book about sea turtles and what that means, and then how that's transferred through your life. Can you share a few words about that? I wanted to ask you. I was curious.
Yeah, so it's interesting as an author, I'm sure you've experienced this as well, when you're doing events and interacting with fans, very often they will tell you their favorite part of the book or a quote that you said that made their day or changed their life. And without a doubt, the most commonly quoted back to me part of the story of the cafe on the edge of the world is the story of a green sea turtle, which is a story that Casey, who is the waitress in the cafe, shares. And the essence of the story, without going into full detail, is that when she was snorkeling with a green sea turtle, she saw the way it interacted with its environment and came to this profound realization about the ways in which she spent her time and allocated her energy. And it's something that forever changed the way she approached life. And she shares this with the character who enters the cafe. And so this has been so cool. Like literally, I can't tell you the number of people who have come up to the signing table and they pull off their sleeve, they pull back their sleeve, they've got a turtle green sea turtle, or people that have pictures on their phone of their entire room decorated in green sea turtles, or I remember a guy in Australia decorated his camper van in green sea turtles and was backpacking across all of Australia. So I love the fact that the story flowed through me, and a piece of that story is the green sea turtle. And as a matter of fact, as part of that, my team and I this year were like, we need to do something super cool with this. And so we have launched a campaign. So every person who buys a copy of the Café on the Edge of the Worlds, whether it's a physical copy or whether you buy the ebook copy, we take the proceeds from that, and it enables us to save the lives of 10 baby green sea turtle hatchlings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's just so awesome. Like, I don't know if you've seen, from the reaction you just gave, you've probably seen them. They're so ridiculously cute and tiny and helpless looking. And you realize that these little tiny things are going to grow into these big, beautiful sea creatures, but only if we give them the opportunity to do that. And so, again, if you heard anything that Catherine and I talked out today and you're like, yeah, my intuition tells me there's something in that Café book, well, there's an extra perk, because the minute you buy it, we're going to save 10 baby sea turtles.
Thank you for sharing that. I really was curious to ask you about the sea turtles.
Yeah, it's I just love the fact, because in general in life, I look for things where we can actually have an impact. Like, I like to know if I'm making a contribution to something, what's actually happening with it, And so it's just awesome that we have drawn the direct line contribution to these amazing organizations who are on the ground, working with the nests, protecting the baby sea turtles, and we get to be a part of that. And everybody who buys the book gets to be a part of that too.
Inspiring. Okay, so I end my show with a question, which you've kind of all but already answered, but what does awakening mean to you?
Yeah, great question. And I love the fact that you do the work. I love the fact that you help people find that moment. I would say for me, it's the realization that I am more than the rest of the world would portray to me that I am. It's this moment where you realize I get to be the captain of my ship. I get to write my story in the way that I want to write it. I get to be the one who controls those thoughts in my head, that I'm not being controlled by the game, but I am the game maker. And the question is, I get chills as I'm thinking about this. The question is not, what am I going to do in the game? The question is, what game am I going to create? And in my case, part of my purpose is to make a positive difference in the lives of others. So what game am I going to create that makes a positive difference somewhere, somehow on this planet for somebody or some little green sea creature like a green sea turtle?
Wow. Exactly the purpose for existence. Why are you here and you're doing it?
So yeah, no, great question.
So you're inspiring. This conversation has been so much fun. I'd love to keep talking. Be mindful of our time. But Delight, thank you so much for coming on. Tell everyone, how can people find you?
Thank you, first of all, for having me on the show and for the work that you do with the interviews and the rest of the work that you do. And I'm sure everyone who listens to your show has already gotten it, but if they haven't, get Catherine's book. I've read it, and there's tons and tons of great stuff in there. As far as finding me, yes, if you want to participate and save 10 baby sea turtles, you can get the book anywhere that you buy it, literally. So the only thing I would ask is that you buy a new copy. So there's a whole resale thing on Amazon, and we don't get anything from that, and therefore we can't save baby sea turtles when you do that. But if you go on Amazon and you buy yourself a new copy, or you go on Barnes & Noble, or anywhere that you can buy a new copy, then you will have the chance to help us save 10 baby sea turtles, and you'll be part of that. And in terms of finding me, you can go to my website, which is johnstrelecky.com, and I have a bunch of articles there. So topics that I don't have a way to weave it into a story yet, but I love the concept, like how do you deal with depression, or what is the key, 3 steps to happiness that you can actually implement in your life on a short-term basis. I take those ideas and I write them in articles, and I'll put those on my website. So feel free to check out those. And then otherwise, feel free to follow me on Instagram. We post lots of cool stuff. My team does an amazing job of posting inspirational content on Instagram. And so that's just at John Strelecky.
And I highly recommend his book, just the book, Café on the Edge of the World. I started reading it and I read it in one sitting. I couldn't put it down. I was like, man, this is so good. Why are we on this earth?
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So great to know you, to call you a friend. Really grateful. Thank you.
Catherine, look forward to our next one. We'll do a round 2 sometime in the future.
Thank you so much for joining Everyday Awakening. Let's keep the conversation going online. You can follow me on Instagram at Catherine Duncan, MABCC. And to keep up to date on the show, subscribe on iTunes and leave a review. I'd love to hear from you.